For those of you that don't know me, I'm James from Giant Peach, and we have Jen on today as well from our strategy team. And Giant Peach is a digital agency that creates strategy to drive growth, content that sparks connection, and user experience that converts. And we're really lucky to work with some fantastic brands and businesses across the UK, doing all of these sort of things to help drive growth, so strategy, design, development, and content. So we're going to be talking about how shopping habits, or how, let me just go back to how COVID's going to change shopping habits forever. So let's look at the face of retail, BC.
Thanks, James. So BC, before coronavirus, we all know that retail's a sort of tricky industry that changes a lot. It's really dynamic. So we thought it'd be really useful to just take a look quickly at how things are already starting to change and the situation BC before Corona. There's obviously been quite a big decline in high street shopping over the last few years, with lots of brands unfortunately going into administration. So in the year to date, we've lost the likes of Oasis, Warehouse, Debenhams, Laura Ashley, Cath Kidston. And while some of those shops will be salvaged, many unfortunately will be gone for good. As I said, retail changes really quickly. And it can be hard to keep up. And what a lot of high street retailers have been doing was coming up with experiences in store. So for example, a bookshop, there were a few examples of bookshops that had opened up perhaps a coffee bar in store, so you could take your time to look at your books and potential purchases over a cup of coffee, all designed to make people spend a bit more time in store. Lots of companies have also been doing things to entertain children. So for example, sofa.com in their high street showrooms had set up little children's play areas, again to keep people in store longer, keep the kids occupied while the parents had a look at things. But these days, a lot of consumers have been doing their research online a bit more. So a few stats that sort of back that up are that 87% of people admit that they research on Amazon before making a purchase, 52% on eBay, another 52% on Google, 50% of 18 to 25s on Instagram, and 90% of 65 and overs on Amazon as well. So a typical emerging consumer journey before coronavirus was that people would read reviews online, do their research perhaps via the brands directly, or as we've just been talking about, on Amazon or any of the other big search engines, social media sites, then go to store perhaps to try something. So rather than just starting the journey by going to Currys, trying out a few Hoovers, the research should be done online. Then the customer would go into store and then probably go back online to find out where they could buy something a bit more cheaply. But obviously that's not something that customers can do at the moment.
Yeah, that was the sort of typical user journey. I think what we were also seeing is more and more brands going digital, or upping their digital game, or going digital only, but also looking into subscriptions. You know, we are in a subscription economy. If you think about how you subscribe to your content, Netflix, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, but also, you know, recipe boxes, HelloFresh, Avon Cole. But we've also got subscriptions with the smaller brands or individual products, like Small, for shopping tablet, washing tablets, or Who Gives a Crap? You know, Who Gives a Crap sold out in multiple countries across the world when at the start of this pandemic. Bin bags or supplements, or one of our clients, Little Cooks, it's a subscription baking box for children, so with no sugar, all natural ingredients. All of these smaller brands selling direct as a consumer on a subscription basis. We're seeing more and more of that. And brands, we're also really taking advantage of social media, selling directly via Instagram, or really improving their social media, organic social media, but also social media advertising to drive traffic to websites to increase sales. Also, you know, aggregators, we can't talk about how retail was changing or has changed without mentioning Amazon. Amazon have been hiring aggressively, and they were already gaining market share, but we're going to see a permanent increase in that market share.
Absolutely. So moving on to more recent times and how the past month, which has seen the beginning of lockdown and a really, really significant change in how people are shopping, what has been happening? Well, UK retail sales have dropped a record 5.1%, and that's since records began in 96. The clothing sector was the sector that's experienced the biggest drop in sales at 34%. Online shopping has reached a record high of 22%, and food sales, in fact, have increased by 11%. But there is no footfall. There are no supermarket delivery slots. Well, there are some, but people aren't really being able to access them. So we're finding that everybody is going straight to the supermarkets, and the bulk of their shopping is happening there. Amazon purchases are obviously increasing too, and they have hired an extra 175,000 staff in the US alone. A lot of the UK supermarkets are hiring extra staff too to help stack shelves, to deliver, and to be on the ground, ensuring that people keep their social distance. So Tesco, Asda, Lidl, Aldi have all been on massive recruitment drives. And this is because supermarket sales were up 22% from the 7th to the 14th of March, right at the beginning of lockdown, compared to last year. And that is astonishingly almost £500 million worth of extra sales. There has been obviously a huge increase in demand for products, ranging between sort of 30 to about 83% across the different lines. And this is all, of course, due to stockpiling. The stats really back that up. So household pet care items saw the biggest rises of up to 65%. And that's where obviously where all the loo roll went. Non-perishable items too, obviously baked beans, flour, pasta. People are stocking up more. They want to avoid going to the shops too often, so they're buying those kind of items. But a new survey that was released yesterday by British Corner Shop, and they are an online retailer that sells British brands to expats living abroad. They released some really interesting stats yesterday about the types of food that people are buying too. So Heinz baked beans and Warburton's crumpets have been listed as the most popular foods sold between the beginning of February and April the 20th. Crumpets, I think, is 55% increase in sales compared to the same time last year, and baked beans up 44%. So that's showing a real desire from people to get hold of comfort foods. Frozen food sales, of course, as well, incredibly popular at the moment, up 33%, and obviously beer, wine and spirits in great demand too, and they've seen an increase of about 11%.
Yeah, I think that increase is just in my house. And it's
even though it's just you there.
It's only me here, yeah. So AC, let's look at AC. So after Corona, what are the lasting impacts going to be on the retail industry? Well, the forecasts are showing that we're looking at a 68% expected increase on online shopping by 2021, 7.1% market growth, supermarket growth in 2020. So that's a £6.8 billion increase on what was previously forecasted. That does raise the question here, is that growth sustainable, or is it based on the fact, as Jen said, that people were stockpiling or just wanted to get a big shop done, or the fact that there's no alternatives right now? But overall, the UK retail industry will see a loss of about £12.6 billion this year. And clothing and footwear brands set to be the biggest losers. The sales in those two sectors or products have declined by about 20 or over 20%. Now, perhaps here, we still want to go into a physical store to try on clothes or try on footwear. I think it's probably because actually, we're not buying them because we have nowhere to go, nowhere to wear our new clothes. Also, there's no need for new school uniform, but there's no need for wedding outfits, or there's no weddings happening. There's no clothes for work, or there's just nowhere to go for us to go at the weekend with new clothes on.
Exactly. I think maybe the one exception to the rule, perhaps loungewear, although I doubt that's going to prop up the clothing industry as a whole, is it?
Yeah.
So moving on to what could change and the things that retailers are having to do and are already sort of starting to do in response to this. It's our theory that this period in the history of retail could be seen as the last digital wave. Every business is going online to some extent, and if they don't, they're going to get left behind. So to what extent are they doing that? Well, it could be just even a Facebook page. If you're a small retailer and you don't have one, this is the time to get one set up. So going back to that sort of notion of the small businesses, it's them who are finding it easiest to diversify. They are more nimble. They, unlike the bigger retailers, haven't got shareholders and huge amounts of staff and systems that have to be adapted. So for small businesses, it's really key to look at how they can diversify. So for example, event caterers are offering freezer meals or home deliveries. Different suppliers such as the farms, fruit and veg growers, fishermen are selling directly. So the supplier is becoming the retailer. There's a really great example of this that's showing an industry sort of really coming together, which is callforfish.com. And at different sort of major fishing ports around the country, all the different fishing groups have joined together to offer a direct-to-consumer service. Because their orders have dried up from the restaurants, they're moving to selling directly to consumer. Taxi firms, for example, are offering deliveries, so keeping their staff in work by taking food, other products around where there is a shortage of delivery drivers or there is not that sort of chain in place. Garden centres are quickly migrating online, and for example, estate agents and other service businesses like that are making more use of video tools, for example. And actually this could be seen as a really good thing for the suppliers and the manufacturers. For them to become retailers cuts out the middlemen and gives them more control over their pricing and their marketing. And if they can adapt to take full advantage of that, it could stand them in really good stead for the future. And something else that could stand businesses in really good stead for the future is treating their staff and their customers well. So PwC have done a lot of research recently into what the retail landscape might look like post-lockdown. And they've said that they don't expect, obviously, the pattern of lockdown spending to be exactly the same as before. But what their survey did reveal is that customers intend to reward more responsible retailers. So those that have looked after their staff, as we said, those who have, environmental concerns in their minds and communicate those to their consumers, they are more likely to perhaps not bounce back completely, but be in a better position to be rewarded by those customers, and they could see people more keen to visit the high street retailers or those smaller, more independent retailers, and that gives some of the people that could be hardest hit a bit more hope.
Yeah, I think that'd be the case, but despite that, digital shopping will become a learned behaviour. No, we're not going to all go out and flood the streets once this lockdown is eased. Our usage of social media has increased dramatically during this period, and those habits will be hard to shake off. People are becoming more comfortable buying directly through Instagram, but also with social media advertising. I think if social media is part of your strategy, and it should be, the stats prove that ads really work. 42% of people have bought after seeing an ad on Facebook, 27% bought after seeing an ad on Instagram, and 13% have bought after seeing an ad on Pinterest. If social advertising, as I say, is part of your strategy, then you have to start looking at TikTok. That we've seen huge growth in TikTok users during this pandemic as people have been locked in and needed something to do. 18 to 25-year-olds are most likely to buy after seeing an ad on Instagram. 69% have already done so, and 26 to 35-year-olds are most responsive to Facebook ads, and 75% have bought after seeing one. I think what we'll see is it will become less about that big supermarket delivery. We'll see multiple subscriptions or memberships directly with brands or specialist websites. There was a lot of talk during the sort of explosion of the Internet of Things about things like your fridge ordering you milk when it knows you're out of milk. I think what we're more likely to see is those multiple subscriptions. So fruit and veg getting delivered, wine getting delivered, dishwasher tablets, supplements, lots of smaller deliveries delivered more regularly. And the user experience improvements for that will have to mean that it's a really smooth process. It's really easy to reorder. It's really easy to manage your subscription. So increasing a food delivery for the weekend because you've got people coming around, or increasing alcohol because you're throwing a party, whatever it might be. Just a super easy interface where you're sliding up and down for those subscriptions. And as these restrictions start to lift, people are still going to have concerns about another outbreak or interacting with others, or just packaging, or using cash, or touching keypads. So I think this is going to be the beginning of the end of cash. Contactless payments are already, growing, but also we'll start to think about other interfaces, other user interfaces. I think voice is going to grow massively. Amazon has already sold over 100 million Alexa-enabled devices, and they have 10,000 people working on Alexa as a product. And we're also going to see more unmanned stores, so going in, picking up products and leaving, and the technology processing all of those payments.
So when it comes to looking at how you can adapt, how you can start to future-proof and start thinking about all these challenges and adapting your business, we think that the best place to start is by really looking at gathering some insight from new customers and returning customers to understand them and their purchase motivations. A lot of retailers, including some that we've mentioned before, like Who Gives a Crap, have probably got huge percentages of their current databases identified as new customers. So it's really important to obsess over data that you can get from these people and use real data as sources of insight, and not just an assumption that you've made or looking at something that you think is a trend. If you take a look at a talk that one of our clients, Ruth McGrath from Nicholas and Harris, who are a bread manufacturer based in Salisbury, did last week, which we can point you in the direction of. She did a fantastic talk full of tips on how to get hold of customer data, research, insight if you're not working with a big budget. And she has spoken about how important that is in terms of adapting what you're doing and not losing sight of an end goal. So whether it's from running surveys with your customers and just getting under the skin of what they're doing on any kind of scale, it's a really important thing to do. And you can start using that data to think about how you're going to change your customer experience and how you might need to adapt, as we said, to new needs. But before doing any of that, it's sort of really important to think about the wider impact any changes that you might rush into might make. Think things through before acting. So, for example, if you are a retailer that has a shop that you're thinking about sort of closing down or ending your rent contract on, think about how you might be able to use that. If it could be somewhere that you could host live cooking demonstrations from or workshops from as an extra source of revenue, perhaps that could be something to explore as we're all moving online a bit more.
Yeah, so I think when thinking about how to use that customer data, we have to look at optimizing your customer experience. Now's the time to invest. Whether you are a business with just a Facebook page, that has to be optimized. But you have to think about customer experience. Is that you, Jen, bleeping at me?
Yeah, sorry, that's a diary notification.
Yeah, but I think you have to think about the customer experience, from some social ad through to landing page, to checkout process, to setting up and managing a subscription, to talking to a member of your team. The complete customer experience has to be seamless. It has to be smooth. And all of your content has to be written for the human being. And we have to start looking at calls to action, making that wording less salesy. And the content you're using, I think, 23% of 18 to 35-year-olds value video content when making a purchase decision. Infinite scrolling is addictive, and video is what captures people's attention and what stops people scrolling. 47% of younger shoppers are also more likely to value multiple or more products, more photos of products. And 63% of shoppers over the age of 65 are more likely to value detailed product descriptions. So think about who your audience is and all of those touch points through that user experience. Because if you can create a real positive purchasing experience online, that will play a part increasing brand loyalty. So whether you are opening up a physical shop or creating a subscription, that brand loyalty is key.
Yeah. And just taking it back to basics as well, could you look at optimizing the products that you're selling? There are a few different ways to do that. So could it be really simple product solutions, such as providing less choice but better quality, sort of harking back to simpler times almost? So could you provide a box, for example, that includes some key staple items that somebody is likely to want to purchase together. Could you also look at streamlining what you've got to offer to be able to provide more of the most successful products, ramping up production of those and perhaps scaling back on other things? And then again, could you team up with other brands or other manufacturers to offer added value? That's not only going to help you reach new audiences, but it's again going to increase that brand loyalty by offering something new, different and exciting to your consumer. We wanted to sort of touch towards the end of this presentation on a few thoughts that we've been thinking about and exploring over the last few months that perhaps aren't quite as pressing, but we think they're really interesting and worth discussing too.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we've mentioned them throughout this talk really, but I think we have to reconsider user journeys. We have to question the touch points currently delivered through that physical touch of foreign objects. So contactless payments, but more of a voice activated and contact free interfaces in the long term. You know, Amazon already have Amazon Go stores in the US, as where you walk in, the technology picks up that you've walked into the store, you pick the products off and put them into your bag, and you walk out and your account's already charged. You know, with their acquisition of Whole Foods and the current situation, I think we're going to see more acquisitions where that, and what that will mean is that shopping experience is much more technology led, and it's going to be a completely different experience than it is now.
Absolutely. And I just touched briefly on teaming up with other brands to offer your products together, but we're seeing more trends at the moment of products and service aggregations. So people coming up with partnerships that provide experiences and more home-based entertainment. So for example, film rentals along with wine and popcorn, for example, or if there is a local theatre who've put on a production, could they show that online with a takeaway, for example, by teaming up with a local supplier? And of course, quiz nights, everyone seems to be getting on board with Zoom quizzes to varying degrees of success, but could that be something for brands to explore in the future too? And our parting thought that we wanted to leave you with is that here at Giant Peach, we do not ever stop talking about the importance of brand. Customers don't just buy from you, they buy into you. So whether you are a consumer brand, whether you're a retailer, try to never lose sight of what that brand is. And you do that by listening to your customers, adapting, but keeping strong key messages at all times. And hopefully that should stand people in good stead and put them in a position to be able to deal with this in a strong way.
Yeah, so thank you very much. Thank you, Jen, for jumping on this webinar this morning. We'd love to get your questions. If you've got any questions, please pop them into the chat room.
Brands asked me about the fish supplier. It's callforfish.com,
Oh, yeah.
And I think they actually use the number 4.
How do we see customer acquisition evolving post-COVID? It's a really good question. I think the way we acquire customers right now through our digital marketing will remain a lot the same. I think how are they going to change? I think people using voice a lot more to find products or services that they're looking for and get them ordered without having that digital user interface. The revenue that Apple AirPods generates is more than Snapchat, Twitter, Spotify combined. And I think what we'll see is an ecosystem around, similar to the App Store, around Apple AirPods, where everything is voice activated. So I think looking at how you can acquire customers via voice is going to be really important in the future.
I think brands are just going to probably have to keep on being creative, trying new things. Again, it comes back to the insights that you can get from talking to your customers. How did they find you? Is it through word of mouth? Can you offer incentives through that way? So by drilling down into how people have found you and why they're sticking with you, you can use those insights to plan your acquisition.
Thank you all again very much for joining us. And hopefully we shall see you again next week. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.